Evening all. Benita, Amy, and Richard should be promoted. I know that it's a all a technological process, so I'm not sure why it's not letting us in as panelists, but
Howdy. My power has been flickering because of this rain that just came through. And so now my internet is a little bit unstable. So I'm going to stay off the video, but did I do something wrong when I was signing up for this meeting?
I don't think so, because it didn't let me in as a panelist either, unless we both did the same thing that was wrong, which is also possible.
I was like, this feels a little different. I don't know. I was like, what am I doing wrong over here? I have no idea.
Let's give like one more minute. Benita and Rebecca should be let in too, yeah. Hey, Rashaki, you look like an astronaut. You always have the best.
I don't even remember doing that.
Okay. We do have quorum, so we can go ahead and get started. I had a few folks who let me know that they would not be here. So, and Valen is one of them. She's still out of state, dealing with some personal family stuff, but should be back hopefully this week. She said she'd be traveling and wasn't sure she could get on, so I will do her bit with reading the roll, Benita. But hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you've been having a wonderful summer. I do want to take a second to acknowledge what happened at UNC today. I'm a UNC student and employee, and I know some other folks probably have connections, so totally fine if people need to hop off or want to hop off. For those of you who need that space or time, totally fine and acceptable. Of course, we don't know everything that happened, but to acknowledge that before we get started. But welcome, and this is our first meeting since June, so the first of the fiscal year. Oh, Lloyd, there was an active shooter on campus today, and a faculty member was killed. And that's kind of all we know right now. Everyone, like, you know, the person's been apprehended and campus is safe, but classes and non-mandatory operations are suspended for tomorrow as well. So just so folks are aware. So yeah, so first of the new fiscal year, we have a new member, which is exciting. So we'll do a couple brief administrative things, have Matt introduce himself, and then launch into our agenda. So let me make sure that I have the most current list. So I'll call the roll first. We can approve the minutes from last time, and then we'll let Matt introduce himself. So Valen and Ahmed let me know they were not going to be here. Robert, is Robert here? I don't think so. Alicia.
Present.
Wonderful. I am present. Alexa isn't here. She told me she wouldn't be here. Rashaki.
Present.
Wonderful. Amy.
Here.
Sherrard.
I'm here.
Brian. I don't see Brian yet either. Matt.
Present.
Is your last name Muntean? Is that-
Muntean, that's right.
Muntean. Okay, perfect. Thanks for letting me know. See if there's anyone else. Anne.
Here.
And Richard.
Present.
Wonderful. All right, I believe that's everybody. And as people come in, I'll see. But Matt, oh, sorry. First, I'll hold a motion to approve our minutes from June as long as there are no corrections needed.
I motion. This is Amy.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you both. And Matt, if you'll just give us just a couple minutes about yourself. Welcome to the CAC.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, you may want to carry the vote on the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Y'all, I'm new. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, everyone who'd like to approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Reginald. Love Robert's Rules of Order. But anyway, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No problem at all. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is Matt Muntean. I moved to Durham in January. My fiance has been at Duke for the last 3 years, and I was able to work here off and on for the last, like during the pandemic. Really love Durham. Excited for this to be my new home. I was in New York before then for about 5 years. I'm an attorney. I worked at a large law firm for a while, and then my last year in New York, worked at a nonprofit doing community and economic development work. So I was really excited about the opportunity to join this committee. I think it's a really exciting time to be doing the work that we're doing. So really looking forward to getting to know all of you and working with y'all.
Wonderful. Welcome again, Matt. We're looking
Thank you.
forward to getting to work with you as well. And welcome to Durham
Thank
permanently.
you.
Great. So Benita, if you wouldn't mind pulling up our agenda, that'd be wonderful.
I'm sorry, repeat that here.
Oh, can you pull up our agenda, please?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna have two different updates about RFPs today from some wonderful community development staff. I'm sure Reginald will introduce, as well as a general department update before we move on to some discussion, public questions or comments, anything like that. So Reginald, would you like to take us away?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Thank you very much. Great to meet you, Matt, and welcome to the Citizens Advisory Committee. Reginald Johnson, I'm the Director of the Department of Community Development and Principal Staff Person to the CAC. One of the things that we wanted to share as part of this agenda is the RFP that we just released on Friday for what we call the Beeman Assemblage on Beeman Street. This is right off of South Roxborough, across from the Lofts Southside Phase 2 and right behind Gethsemane Baptist Church. This is part of the Southside Revitalization Project that we've been engaging in probably over a decade now, but there's some parts that are not finished. Of course, one of them is phases 3 and 4 of the Lofts Southside, which we're working on now. But another part is the part that is focused on home ownership in the neighborhood, and that's right, the Beeman Assembly. So one of the things that we've been working on is the request for proposals for the Beaman, site. One, because we want to, finish the project in Southside Revitalization Project. And two, there's probably for this project no better time than the present, because I don't think in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of affordable housing, for the foreseeable future, the environment is not going to get any better. And so one of the things that we decided that now is the time, one, we had made a commitment to the neighborhood, that we would finish. And so this is, a major step toward that effort. As Richard, Valzanis, who is, one of our senior project managers, here in community development, and is serving as the project manager for this RFP, and the project that, may, result from it, will share with you, is that this is, we've taken a different strategy, for this project. We're going to ask the developers to share with us their ideas and, not say specifically what we want, other than, we know that we want it to be home ownership. It must be home ownership. There's federal, funding in that property. And so we have to focus on the majority of the homeowners being low and moderate income. And furthermore, we did make a commitment to the residents that it would be, home ownership, and we're working to keep that, commitment. Now, of course, since we did the project, it's become, the rules have changed according to planning. The density has, increased, so we have to take all those factors into account. Of course, the price of housing has increased, and the challenge in our neighborhood has become more, impacted. But, now is the time, and so we're going to give it a shot. And so what we have Richard here is to present, what the RFP that was just released is, what's the contents and what we're asking for. And so, I'll, just turn it over to Richard. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Reginald. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. As Reginald said, I'm Richard Valzanis. I'm Senior Project Manager with the Department of Community Development, and I work on the multifamily team. I've asked Benita to kind of pull up an exhibit that we included in the RFP that shows you the exact location of the site. So, as Reginald stated, last Friday on August 25th, we released a request for proposal seeking developers to partner with to develop the Beaman Street assemblage, which is located in our South Side neighborhood. You can see by the map, and Reginald described the location, but it corners with East Piedmont Avenue, South Roxbury Street, and Scout Drive, and then to the north there, which we don't have on the map, it's Chestnut Street, which is the northern boundary of the site. It's a 3.91 acre site. The physical address of the site is 105 East Piedmont Avenue. The appraised value of the site is $5.1 million. The current zoning allows up to 12 units per acre. So, from a simplistic point of view for math, 12 times 4 is 48. So, the potential there is to get 48 units on that site. There is a rezoning or there's other development plan processes that potential respondents could go through that potentially could increase the number of units up to 70. Based on the appraisal and other information we've received, the highest and best use for the site is townhome development with approximately between 50 to 60 units. And I'm just going to do a high level overview of the RFP, and if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you. Scope of the project or scope of the RFP is, as Reginald said, is home ownership. We'll only accept home ownership proposals. Candidates can choose to put forward any project of their choice. So it could be single family, it could be a mix of, it could be townhome development, it could be condo development. So we're looking at this as if it's a blank slate, a blank canvas. So Mr. Developer, you bring to us, what your concept is for the site. It could be a for-profit organization, it could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a combination of the above, right? So it could be a combo of nonprofit or for-profits. Important piece here: 51% of the units have to be affordable to families at 80% or below. So if you bring me 40 units, 25 of them have to be affordable to families at 80% below. So that's the affordable housing component that we're including in the RFP. Just some other highlights. There's going to be a minimum period of affordability on the units of 15 years, just to try to encourage and continue to have affordability within the neighborhood. Got to meet Energy Star System Vision standards. So we're looking for some type of energy or green building energy efficiency inclusion in the construction of the units. And they have to be compatible in size and architecture with the single family development that we've constructed in Southside, which we call the bungalows at Southside. So, you know, architectural style, size has to be compatible to that. Schedule wise, as we stated, the schedule released on August 25th. There'll be a pre-submittal conference on September the 12th at our office at 10 o'clock. Proposals then will be due back on November 15th, with evaluations of the proposals probably running into the November, December timeframe, with potentially an execution of an agreement with, you know, a responder somewhere in February of 2024. Evaluation, just touch on evaluation criteria within the RFP. There's 6 categories. One is understanding of the project. So we want to make sure you understand, you know, what you're submitting to us and what the city is asking for the site. You know, that's going to include conceptual designs, infrastructure improvements, anything that's going to be constructed on the site there. We want you to tell us and explain to that thoroughly what's going to be on the site. Management plan, which is basically just going to be an overall your construction schedule. We want to see your construction schedule and how detailed that is. Marketing and sales plan. It's going to be important that you submit a plan that reaches out to the diversity within our community. So we're looking for that. We want to make sure there's an excellent plan to market and sell the units. Experience and qualifications. You know, it speaks for itself. You know, if you present a townhome development, we want to see experience that you've taken on that type of development in the past. Project cost. You know, what are you going to ask from the city from a financial perspective? You know, what type of assistance are you going to need from us? And then lastly would be capacity. You know, we're going to look at the overall team there just to make sure your team's got the experience that's needed to carry out the development and then to market and sell the units. Evaluation team, and we've got 4 representatives within community development that will be on the team. One will be from the multifamily team, one will be from our neighborhood stabilization team, one will be from our internal fiscal team, one will be from our compliance team. We'll have a representative from city county planning on the team, and then we'll have a representative from the community on the team from the Southside Neighborhood Association. And lastly, RFP link, you can go to either our website, community development's website, or City of Durham's purchasing website and download the link to the RFP. That's it. And got any questions? Feel free to ask.
Thanks so much, Richard. We appreciate it. Are there any questions about this RFP or the RFP process in general? Because we will be hearing about another one in just a second.
I have a question about just kind of your vision for the space. I know you said it's a bit of a blank slate, but in terms of amenities, so I mean, is that like a hope of yours that there will be a clubhouse or a community center or, you know, some type of amenities for the residents there?
Right. I mean, again, you know, I'm not dodging the question, but it's going to depend on the concept that we get. If we get a single family concept, potentially maybe not see that, but I think if we get a townhome development, there's an opportunity there, you know, for more families, for more young people to be in that small area of a neighborhood. And we would like to see an opportunity there for either, you know, access to the community center at Southside. So there's a community center already in Southside. So access to that, or, you know, like you say, maybe access to a clubhouse or something similar within that particular community.
Richard, can you provide a context for just how large or small the site is?
Well, it's 3.91 acres. And so, you know, it's relatively a small site. Now we're developing the Lawson South Side across the street, which is approximately 5 acres, and we're putting 100 units there. And that's a rental development. But, you know, the zone is going to allow for, you know, as I stated earlier, I mean, the appraiser has recommended the highest and best use as being townhome development with a sweet spot of 60 units. So I think potentially we could see 60 units on that site.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Sure. I was just saying, I can't tell if you're just talking to yourself or if you have a question.
I was talking to myself. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Wonderful. Thank you.
I have one question, Richard. You said
Sure.
that there's like a valuation that said that the results of that were that the best use of the property would be for townhomes. What are some of the things that go into that?
So that's that, you know, we hired an appraiser to go out and do an appraisal for us. So my thought would be from her appraisal process or from their appraisal process, you know, they look at over other vacant parcels and or developments within a certain radius of the Beaman Street assemblage. And, you know, with looking at the zoning, which is going to allow potentially up to 70 units, from a economic perspective, most likely that they see that townhome development is the best plan for that site. So if you take, for example, if you take the 5.1 million and divide it by 60, well, I think that's $85,000 a lot. That's pretty expensive for a lot, right? But so I think the increased number of units helps decrease the amount of funding that's going to be needed from the city's perspective. So I think we would encourage, or we would like to see a development. Do we want 60 units? I don't know if we want 60, but I think we're going to see a development that's got it range to 40 to 60 units. Just
When you
from
say-
the cost perspective.
Sorry, when you say investment from the city, what are the kinds of, is that like putting in the necessary like utilities and things like that, or?
Right. So just recall, we're asking for them to give us a concept. So they could ask for city to put in infrastructure. They could ask for down payment assistance from the city. They could ask for pay us a reduced value of the lot. So
Okay.
there's options out there. I mean, I think, and I've said this, we've already presented to the neighborhood association. This is going to be a complicated proposal because, you're asking for 51% of the units to be affordable. We know what the sales prices are of single family units in that neighborhood, and they exceed $350,000 to $400,000. So for us to be able to get affordable units in there, it's going to have to be a lot of packaging of finances to make the deal work.
Okay, and then my last question, and I'm sure it's just related to my kind of newness to this. You said that the affordable housing will be at 80%, and that's of the area median income.
Right, and for a family of 4, that's 80,900.
That is the area median income, or that's
The
what
maximum
80% of the.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
yes, that would be the maximum income that a family of 4 could earn to be eligible to purchase in the neighborhood.
Got it.
The affordable units.
Okay.
I think what we're going to see, we're going to see a mix of affordable and for sale units, and the others are going to be market rate units that are going to be at market rate prices. And I think that's what we're going to see. And then, that's going to help hopefully decrease the subsidy that's required for the affordable units.
Okay.
Any other questions? Going good. Okay. Reginald, can you transition us into our next RFP we're hearing about?
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that, Sharon. If there are any more questions, you can direct them to me, and either I'll answer them or we'll talk with Richard and get an answer provided to you. So thank you, Richard. Have a good night. The next RFP that we issued, and we have some additional ones in the pipeline, but this one's already hit the street. We're going to shift gears to homelessness and the work of the citizens, of the continuum of care. And so we also have here Lloyd Smidler, who is one of our key staff members on the homelessness team that works with us, that plays two roles. One works as the city's project manager for the investments that we have in homelessness, but also one of the other key parts, we're the lead agency for the continuum of care, which is all of the agencies, big and small, that work in homelessness in Durham. And so we are the administrators for the continuum, and sometimes we have to issue RFPs or provide technical assistance or a range of things for providers who provide services to those who are homeless, those who are about to be homeless, and those with other types of needs. And so what I'll do is turn it over to Lloyd, who's been with the city for quite some time. And he serves as the senior project manager for our homelessness team. Lloyd.
Thank you, Reginald. Good evening. Hopefully you can see my screen. Let's see, I didn't start at the beginning. I'm going to start the slideshow from the beginning now. Thanks again. I have been with the city since 2011, and I've been working on homelessness issues professionally since about 1994 on behalf of people experiencing homelessness, and more at the system level in my work with the city of Durham. So I've got just a few slides to review. I don't review about the continuum of care, particular funding. Within the homelessness arena, the term continuum of care can refer to a couple of different things, and I'll briefly say that first of all, it simply can refer to the community-wide collaborative effort to address the complex needs of people experiencing homelessness. In addition to that, our federal partners at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development annually have a continuum of care homeless grants competition. And that is a competition in which federal funds, our federal tax dollars, are distributed to over 400 continuum of care across the country to help address the needs of people experiencing homelessness in those communities. Continuum of care funding through HUD is specifically focused on three primary activities. First, permanent supportive housing for people who are experiencing homelessness, to help them get back into housing and maintain the housing for the long term. There's also short-term housing assistance called rapid rehousing, which focuses on helping get people quickly out of homelessness and provide short to medium-term rental subsidies to help them get stabilized back into housing, and then hopefully they can continue to maintain the housing on their own after that short-term assistance. And then a small portion of our funding in Durham and in various communities is to help us maintain a common database, a community-wide database of people experiencing homelessness called the Homeless Management Information System. It is a web-based database that our community partners enter client data into, and it helps us and the federal government as it aggregates information from across the country, helps us understand who is experiencing homelessness, what their particular challenges are, and helps the federal government look at how it can be more effective in utilizing federal assistance to help address the needs of homeless people. So in the 2023 competition, I'll move into the next series of slides. With that, by just a very brief introduction, I'll talk a little bit about the opportunity for this continuum of care funding in 2023. And you see on this slide the total funding available for what I call pots of funds that are available to Durham. The only portion of these funds that is non-competitive that we can be assured of receiving simply by submitting the grant request to HUD is 106,000 non-competitive COC planning grant that helps fund some of the activities within our community development department to support the work of the continuum of care. The other three funding sources above that are more competitive. We're competing for these funds with the roughly 400 continuum of care across the nation applying for these funds. One distinction between continuum of care funding and some of the other funding that the department utilizes and the city utilizes within the city is that these contracts are not specifically between the city of Durham and the people that implement, or the organizations that would implement the project, except for the COC planning grant, which is a contract or agreement between the department and HUD. The other projects that are funded through this competition would have contracts directly with housing and urban development at the federal level. So there's two tiers of funding for the competitive the competitive portion of these funds. HUD has structures it so that there is real competition, and several of the projects that we recommend to HUD for funding are likely to not be funded. We seek to have a competitive application with other COCs, other communities from around the state and the nation, but HUD structures it in such a way that it really wants to encourage communities to do the best job they can to address the supportive service needs as well as the housing needs of people experiencing homelessness. And so it's set up the tiering in this way, and we can talk more about that. Thank you, Rick. Another portion of the funds are, just very briefly, the domestic violence bonus funds. HUD has been offering domestic violence bonus project applications since 2018, when it started setting aside about $50 million nationwide for a domestic violence bonus projects. It's certainly known that people who are fleeing domestic violence, sexual assaults, intimate partner violence, and there's various other terms used within the community or within the domestic violence arena to describe people who are survivors of attacks, violence being done to them by partners or people they're in relationship with. HUD has recognized that this often does lead to homelessness, and so since 2018, HUD has specifically allocated funds for domestic violence bonus projects. In Durham, we have gotten several new grants through this portion of the annual competition. In 2018, we received a grant for rapid rehousing to help rapidly rehouse survivors of domestic violence who are experiencing homelessness. We also received similar grants in 2021 and in 2022. While the COC, we talked about the COC competition being an annual competition, due to the pandemic in 2020, HUD did not actually conduct a competition, but it simply renewed the existing projects that it had funded in 2019. So there are two ways the domestic violence bonus can be funded in this competition. One is with that $50 million or so. HUD looks at, evaluates the project application separately, and a project application can win an award through that competition. If it doesn't win an award from HUD in that competition, it can take its place in the regular competition, in the regular ranking of COC ranked projects. And HUD makes clear that, for example, if we are ranking 12 projects and we rank a domestic violence bonus project as number 9, HUD says if your number 9 DV bonus project receives funding through the DV bonus project, then we take it out of your ranking, and projects ranked 10, 11, and 12 would each move up 1 rank and then be considered in the regular competition. And the COC planning grants are not competitively ranked. So once we submit one, we are eligible to receive that for the support of the work within the department. This slide shows the schedule that we've had for this competition. HUD released the notice of funding opportunity on July 5th, the day after Independence Day. And we have been busy through our homelessness team working to get these various aspects of completing an application completed by HUD's deadline of September 28th, 2023. And some of these bullet points give you a few thoughts about what we have been doing since July 5th to move this process forward. We have a scoring committee. I can talk further if you're interested in some of the things that we are scoring in evaluating our applications. One of the challenges around ranking projects is that we have really several different kinds of projects. We have our homeless management information system, which is a very important part of our local efforts to address homelessness, to help us track who is experiencing homelessness and what their situations are. Then we also have the housing projects. I mentioned rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing as being the 2 key housing types that are funded through this competition. So within that, we would have renewal projects. HUD understands, and we understand, that if a project is not renewed, if it loses funding through this competition, as some may, we run the risk of returning some people who are only able to maintain housing because they are getting the housing subsidies of a permanent supportive housing project or the short-term subsidies of a rapid rehousing project. We run the risk of returning them to homeless if they are still in a situation where they can't maintain housing without adequate housing subsidies. But at the same time, we also want to make new project funding available, in the COC bonus funds that I referenced in one of the initial slides of $149,253, as well as our domestic violence bonus funds, are specifically for new projects. And so we have the challenge of ranking those projects in relationship to each other and basically telling HUD through our ranking process, these are the projects that if HUD cannot fund all of them, these are the projects that we want HUD to fund most importantly. I have one slide then that's a very kind of brief introduction to the RFP around the continuum of care funding. The homelessness team and the department is involved with a couple other funding sources, and this slide briefly references the state of North Carolina Emergency Solutions Grant funding. Those of you who have been on the Citizens Advisory Committee for a year or longer perhaps have some familiarity with the city's entitlement emergency solutions grant funds that we are also involved with distributing. So we get really similar amounts of money, about $170,000 to $175,000 each year from HUD directly as an entitlement grant. And then we also have responsibility as a department to help the Durham Continuum of Care submit an application to the state of North Carolina's Department of Health and Human Services for the this year for 171,000 for the State Emergency Solutions Grant. And as it says in that first bullet, we recommended the state fund Housing for New Hope, one of our key community partners, a nonprofit organization that does a wide variety of things. They operate some permanent supportive housing in Durham. They also operate rapid rehousing projects. They're providing the primary street outreach throughout the entire county of Durham County, full-time street outreach workers working to help unsheltered people that I think we probably all see around on the streets and panhandling and seeking assistance. They provide regular outreach to them and try to help them get into housing. And then as the second bullet describes, we are in the process of finalizing awards from an earlier RFP that we did this spring for the use of these three sources of funds. And we are close to getting those award letters out and beginning the process. These would be for contracts that the department and the city will have with our nonprofit community partners to use these funds in one case to support case management for people experiencing homelessness, primarily help them get back into housing or to maintain housing. And then secondly, also to fund rapid rehousing, housing subsidies, as well as case management for people who are accepted into those rapid rehousing projects. That's all I had by way of slides. I'm certainly available. I think my manager, Colin Davis, I believe, is still on the call. I'm going to stop sharing and get back to the screen, and I'll put my video on again. I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Just practically, when we're talking about these projects, sort of the various types of things that might become a project. I saw some examples in your slides, like you mentioned a couple of times, subsidies for rapid rehousing, street outreach, other supportive services for folks who might be experiencing homelessness. Is that really like the types of projects we're talking about? Like a project wouldn't, the scope of something like building a new shelter, like that would not be the type of project we're talking about for this?
That's correct. Using these funds to build a new emergency shelter, this would not be a eligible use of these funds.
Any other questions for Lloyd or Colin?
I have one or two. So I take the point of that if a program is ended and then the funding that they would get is going to dry up, and so that might lead to an acute increase in some people's returning to homelessness. And I take the budget, or the amount of money that was awarded was largely to renew existing projects. Is that typical in a given cycle? That, I'd say, I don't know the exact number, but it was I think a considerable majority is just going to renew existing programs or projects.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're happy to talk about it a little further. HUD does structure this in such a way that there is a competition, and so HUD is encouraging communities to evaluate its projects to make sure that we are using the federal funds as best we can to address the needs of people experiencing homelessness. So again, our tier one is funding that, if we generally score reasonably well on our collaborative application, HUD will fund all of the projects that are in tier one up to that 93% level, which means that of the 1,886,000 and some odd dollars that we need to fully fund the 10 existing projects, we are only guaranteed $1,754,000 of that. So we're placing at higher risk, and we are serious risk of losing about $32,000 because that's falling into tier two. In tier two, HUD structures it in such a way that you only get tier two funding if you really score quite well on your collaborative application relative to other COCs and how they score across the country, right?
And the scoring is like this, the city and the number of folks who were involved in the process. It's the score that they come up with. Is that right?
There's what's called a collaborative application, which really kind of summarizes to HUD what our community is doing to address the needs of people experiencing homelessness. HUD, it's a 200-point rubric that HUD has put together, and the rubric changes slightly from year to year, but very similar rubric to what it is, what it was last year. So HUD evaluates that, and then when it gets to tier two, HUD takes half of the points that we scored on the collaborative application and combines it with their score of the individual project applications that we're recommending for funding. And then they go from the highest scoring COCs to the lowest, and they keep on distributing money until there's no money left in their budget, in HUD budget, for the continuums of care. We have gotten, where we've had success over the last several years, is we've gotten projects that straddled tier one and tier two. So straddling is the idea that you might have, say, a $200,000 project. 100,000 of it is in tier one, and the second half is in tier two, right? So HUD says we'll fund a project in tier one if it's large enough to be a viable project. But HUD might say, well, if you've only got, say, 20,000 of that $200,000 budget in tier one, HUD will say, well, we may not fund that tier one project at all. Or if you score well enough, it might fund not only the 100,000 in tier one, but it also might fund the second 100,000 in tier two. That success maintaining some of that funding. We've also gotten, as I mentioned, I think 3 domestic violence bonus projects funded. I think last year we were able to get a project funded in domestic violence bonus because we have reallocated. HUD does want us to reallocate funds from low performing projects to higher performing projects, or to, but we want to give organizations a reasonable shot at putting a good project, developing a good project. I mean, it can take some time for a new project to get off the ground, right? I mean, just kind of, again, I'm not sure how much time you have on the agenda for this discussion, but generally projects that are funded in this year's cycle they'll know, HUD will announce who's funded maybe by the end of February of next year. So we submit the application at the end of September. Maybe by February, HUD lets us know who's funded, and then the HUD works for sometimes 6 to 8 months or more to actually put a contract together with those projects, right? So the project may not be funded until, or actually start implementing a project, whether it's permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing, until the latter part of 2024. So then next year, the project got funded this year, right? It's a new project, got funded. we don't have any performance data to go on next year. So HUD says, okay, we're going to renew it next year. And maybe in 2026 or 2025 for 2026. So there's all this lead time, right? And so we typically within the Durham community have given projects at least 3 years to get a project kind of off the ground. Last year we reallocated 2 projects. That one was a project that had struggled to get off the ground for a couple of years, and another one was a project that kind of no longer fit within the overall portfolio of the organization that was implementing that, and they had been working on that for some years. But we kind of want to work with them. We're trying to we give bonus points on our new project application form for new organizations. We would like to see more organizations apply for these funds and get funded, because we want to try to expand the number of organizations that are using these funds to benefit people experiencing homelessness. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question, Matt? Or?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot there. And the last point that you touched on is kind of really what I was hoping to get at, which is that, at one point, every existing program was a new program. And so is part of whether the decision on whether it gets renewed, how it performed when we first decided to give, or when we first decided to score them at a level that was likely for them to get funding, if I'm describing the process accurately. So, sorry, go ahead, Colin.
No, sorry, please finish.
So I'm just, as the problem becomes more acute and visible and is affecting more people, I'm just wanting to have a better understanding of what the evaluation is on how a program is working and whether we're going to support it for the next cycle.
I wanted to sort of help answer that question for you, Matt, because it's a great question. And while we're looking at these funding cycles on an annual basis, we, as the lead agency for the continuum of care, have to monitor and evaluate the projects on a regular basis. And if we're only monitoring when it's renewal time, there's no lead time to reallocate the funds. If you have a poor performance, there's no time to plan it. So really, we do in Durham twice a year, we do performance evaluations, looking at how are these organizations performing against benchmarks that are established by the continuum of care, i.e., how many people are exiting the program to permanent housing, how many people are increasing income, how many people, what's the average length of stay in the program, things that HUD is grading us on as a system. And that's part of that collaborative application that we get graded on as the lead agency, as the lead, as that collaborative application, as the team score, essentially. So we twice a year look at these programs. And when we find organizations that are falling behind or falling short of those goals, the Performance Management Committee of the Homeless Services Advisory Committee will work with that nonprofit and put in place a performance improvement plan, basically putting them on notice. You got to get this fixed, or we're going to be looking at reallocating funding. The trick is when you start reallocating funding, you've got people in these projects, especially a permanent supportive housing program, that are relying on a rental subsidy and case management for that program. So if you reallocate a permanent supportive housing program, you have to have a plan for what are you going to do with the people who are in that program, because they have to go somewhere. You can't let them become homeless. And we also have to juggle that fine line of HUD doesn't want to see you decreasing the number of permanent units available in the system. So we have to be smart and realize where and how we reallocate. And it usually, a true reallocation process is probably about a 12-month process. From the time you make the decision to say, okay, we're going to reallocate, it may not be for at least one more grant. There may be a grant cycle in between, because it takes that much time to plan all the moving pieces and make sure you've got an organization coming on that could absorb those folks. We're in the process of doing that right now with an organization that's starting out of last year's reallocation process and trying to transfer eligible clients.
Great. Does, in the same way that y'all evaluate projects, does HUD evaluate y'all? Or, and what is, if that doesn't go, or if, depending on how that's scored, what is the impact of that?
That's a great question. So we get evaluated on a couple of things. One, we turn in system performance measures, and part of that is our point in time count. Our system performance measures include exits to permanent housing, length of time people are experience homelessness, from the time they report experiencing homelessness to the time they exit homelessness. And they also grade us on our returns to homelessness from people who exited and come back. So that's one area that they're looking at, and that goes into our collaborative application. And the way you look at, the easiest way to look at the collaborative application that we submit is think of it any team sport you want. You've got a team that has to get a total score, and then you've got a whole bunch of players on that team. So we're going in and putting forth this team effort, which is our collaborative application that we're working on writing now, which is talking about all the great things that we do in Durham. And then we have to be honest, like, you know, HUD says, what is your coordination with the healthcare system? What is this? So you have to write about how are we working with Duke? How are we working with Alliance? How do we work with Lincoln? How do we work with these outside? How do we work with the justice system? And if we don't have a strong answer on how we work with these groups, we'll lose some points in that. Now, part of also what makes that strong are all of our projects that are part of that application, the project applications. So their data, their work, part of that, you know, twice a year evaluation that we do that goes in, feeds this. And then we've got the individual players, if you will, which are the projects that are being recommended to go in this. So you get your team, and then you've got your, here's who's scoring this many points, here's who's passing for this, here's who's doing this, the individual statistics in there that all come together. And then we have a pretty good idea of how we're doing as a continuum based on whether or not you're funded. One, as Lloyd said, we've got tier 1 and tier 2 funding, and 7% of your annual renewal demand goes into a tier 2. So HUD sort of, after they score everything, sort of comes up with a baseline number. And essentially, if you don't meet that baseline number, your tier 2 funding is at risk. And if you don't meet that baseline number, you're definitely not going to get any bonus projects. Bonus projects tend to be funded for when you're above that minimum threshold score. And then HUD starts awarding bonus projects, as Lloyd said, from highest score down until they run out of bonus money.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. If not, I do have one myself, but it may involve multiple community development staff. Colin, Lloyd, Reginald, anyone else? Can you tell us a little bit about what RFPs, what kind of that engagement process can look like for CAC members and other folks? I know I've sat on a review panel before, actually, for a CAC related grant. So is there, you know, there is, but how does that space work for community involvement in that process? And are there any upcoming RFPs you all anticipate that CAC or other members might be interested in serving on if they have the expertise?
So I'll take a first stab at that question. One of the things, so RFPs, request for proposals, this is how the city chooses entities to do business with. Using tax dollars, it has to be competitive. You have to go with, you know, sometimes if it's with bids, the lowest responsible bidder. Oftentimes in our area, it's not bids. We usually have a criteria that Matt and Richard have talked about, that we evaluate the proposals against the criteria. We use that with some expertise, and because RFPs have become a bit more complicated over the years. So we have to rely on expertise that we have in the department as well as across the city. And in some contexts, in some RFPs, we do have the opportunity for citizen representatives. That's where the CAC comes in. also the Affordable Housing, the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. Most of the review panels for the Homeless Services Advisory for homelessness do include representatives of the Homeless Services Advisory Committee and one of their standing committees. What we often do for the other RFPs outside of homelessness is we do often include citizens in different ways, including citizens advisory committee members. If you heard Richard say that one of the members of the neighborhood Southside will be on the review panel. One of the panels, we do have an upcoming RFP that we are working on now for rehab and substantial rehab, minor rehab and substantial rehab. It's probably will be another 45, 60 days before that comes out. But that will be an opportunity, probably the first one in a little while, that we'll have a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee to serve on. And so that will be the first one that's coming up, probably in another, I would say maybe 45 days or so. But we try to include different perspectives and expertise in particular on the review panels, and having citizen input is a part of that.
Thank you, Reginald. Wonderful, wonderful summary as always. Yeah, if those opportunities do come up, I know they vary in technicality, depending on what's actually being requested, but I do encourage y'all to get involved. I'm sure we'll hear about it more, but it was a really cool, interesting experience when I did it. Wasn't like a huge time commitment. Really got to know a little bit more about how the city works. So just a pub for participating in RFP panels and other department guided things. Great. Anything else about these two RFPs? Reginald, do we want to provide a short-ish update?
Oh, yes, I'd be glad to, and it's going to be short-ish. I do want to share a couple of things that are going on for the department that are particular of importance and of note. One of them, speaking of evaluations, we were evaluated. HUD does come out physically now that COVID is relatively ended. But we do have had on-site monitoring over the summer over the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, as well as the CDBG Coronavirus edition. And we had a project that was reviewed, and they would come in and review the files that we have in-house, review the general ledger, review the actual nonprofit providers, and the records to make sure whether everything is in order and give us feedback. I'm pleased to report with that report, monitoring report, we did not receive any concerns or any findings. For those not familiar, finding is a violation of law or regulation that governs the program. A concern doesn't reach that level, but it's something that we would need to improve on and make some work on that could turn into a finding, which would be a violation of a regulation or law. But with this program, this evaluation of CDBG, we did not have any concerns or any findings. And so I'm pleased to report that, that the staff worked very hard to make that happen. And one of the programs that with the coronavirus that was reviewed was our partnership with Durham Public Schools, which includes the PALS program, which is the learning program that we're using to help schools that have in low and moderate income areas that have had learning loss due to coronavirus. And so those include the Burton Elementary, W.G. Pearson, Y.E. Smith, and Fayetteville Street. And so what we said basically says the records are in order. We also know that the program is going relatively well also. Actually, our rep said that she's going to share what we're doing here with folks in Mississippi because they had some challenges with schools in Mississippi due to the damage with the tornadoes and all. And so it's going to share some of the ideas. So that was good. Also, I would, changing gears, go to our down payment assistance program, which has actually been opened. We have lenders, including Movement Mortgage, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, I think, and there's one more, but it's on our they're on our website. That this is we're relaunching the program, have relaunched the program to provide up to $80,000 in down payment assistance and closing costs to persons who are 80% or below the area median income in the purchase of a house. So we're just getting that kicked off. And you'll be seeing some more advertisements on that upcoming through social media. Also, I wanted to share that I did confirm a lot of the work that we've been doing recently includes a Choice Neighborhoods Initiative grant with the Housing Authority, as well as Commerce Street, which is a major part of that project, as well as the Dillard Street, which is another portion of that Commerce Street. You see Liberty has been torn down and there's work going on there. But all of that is part of the CNI, and the Housing Authority did win a 9% tax credit for Dillard Street. So that was announced this month. And so what I did confirm that we will have at our next meeting, somebody from the Housing Authority that will come and provide a detailed update on all of that. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. And so look forward to having that. And then also shifting gears again, we're going to announce that the Hardy Street, where we have some money in that project, this is a creation of low and moderate income apartments on Hardy Street. They're going to have the groundbreaking on September the 28th. So you'll be getting some notices on that. And so I'll conclude there. I mean, we've had some great presentations and the sharing of information. I don't want it to be too dense, but I just wanted to bring those highlights up right quick.
I appreciate that, Reginald. And y'all are doing such incredible work as always, but I know especially y'all are some people down. So extra special congratulations to y'all for doing that well and doing it against some odds. One quick housekeeping thing before I forget. Lloyd, would you be able to send your slides to Benita so we can include them in our minutes if that's okay with you?
Maybe, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Are there any questions for Reginald about those updates? All right. I believe our next agenda item is board discussion and other business. I don't personally have anything for that section, but if anyone else has anything they'd like to discuss, we can do that. Feeling good? Again, welcome, Matt. I guess you're our board discussion / other business today. And then I believe we have, I'm not sure, we have one person who's attending via Zoom, Joyce. Benita, would you let her in just in case she has any questions? And I'm not sure if you've been able to be monitoring the YouTube, but were there any comments on the YouTube live? In the meantime, hello, Joyce, welcome. Thank you for attending. Do you have any questions for our presenters today? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, just a quick reminder for next meeting. Thank you, Reginald, for confirming that DHA will be coming. And for Matt and everyone else, we always meet on the fourth Monday. So our next meeting will be September 25th. Thank you for all of you wonderful community development staff for coming and speaking with us today. Oh, Robert, your hand is up.
Hello, I'm sorry I was late. I wondered if you could mark my presence, please.
I did.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I had an issue with my computer. It was one place and I tried another one from home and I could not log in. I apologize for being late.
All good. Yeah, no problem at all. I'm glad you can make it.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, I will request a motion to conclude our meeting.
I move to conclude the meeting.
All right, can I get a second?
I second and want to congratulate you, Leah, on your first meeting chairship.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Yes, welcome to the new fiscal year. And Robert, our vice chair, is here. So Valen will be taking over communication starting next month. Like I said at the beginning, she has some extenuating circumstances this month, but thank you all again for your support, and I will see you all in September.
We didn't vote again.
Oh, do
We
we have,
motioned and
Reginald, do we
seconded.
have to, yeah, Reginald, do we have to vote to close the meeting?
No, you don't.
Okay.
Oh, you were right, Leah.
No, hey, I appreciate you bringing it up. But anyway, have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here.
Good night.
Bye.